Today, we have the opportunity to learn from a dynamic entrepreneur who's made significant strides in both cybersecurity and community service. Zinhle Maseko started her journey as an entrepreneur, pitching to investors, to investing herself on a block footwear sneaker product. Today, we learn from someone who is passionate about innovation and impact. Let's check in. Zinhle, how are you checking in?
Ah, man, I'm grateful. Actually, it's been a full week, full day filled with work. So honestly, I'm grateful to be here, take a pause, reflect, have a conversation on the journey. It's very rare that one gets to zoom out and, reflect on the journey that you've been. So I guess I'm good.
Okay.
Yeah.
No, that's nice. That's nice. I mean, it's always good, yeah, like you're saying, to, look back and say, yeah, out of all this noise, how far have I come?
Mm,
What has been my journey? And I'm sure everyone that is watching this today is going to be interested in that.
yeah.
But has your day been good?
It's been good, fairly good. Tried to hold myself together through all the madness, but yeah, overall it's been good.
Okay. No, nice one. Welcome. Thank you for gracing us with your presence. You are officially the first lady.
Oh, really?
Yep.
That's good to know.
So we need that sounding bell. We've not sat down with a lady in the past few sessions that we've had. So please don't disappoint. No pressure, no pressure. But I'm just saying you've got imbogodo dada.
Yeah, no, I think that's a lot of pressure.
Yeah. Okay. Look, tell us about yourself. Who is Zinhle? Your upbringing, and where did you grow up? Your family background, and anything that you think people want to know about you that you're comfortable telling us.
Yeah, so I was born and raised in the Vaal. I went to school at General Smuts and then proceeded to pursuing my BSc IT degree at Northwest University. I was always the kind of girl that aimed high, academically, first and second year, top achiever. And in my final year, I thought, well, let me go for something different. And that year I was crowned Miss Northwest University. And this was in 2016. So I've always been someone that desires and is driven by excellence. And not only throughout my schooling years, going into my career, started working at one of the top 4 banks in the country. First as a risk analyst, and then, became a award-winning IT risk manager at First Rand. It's been an exciting journey. And so much of the earlier years of my life have shaped who I've become, more particularly in my career and in the entrepreneurship space. But we'll go into that. Family background, I've got a 4-year-old son.
Okay.
Love him very much. He's at his toddler stage now, so he drives me crazy.
Yeah. No.
Lots of sleepless nights, and but yeah.
But the cuteness is there.
Yeah. Yeah, no, you love it, but you also can't wait for it to all, to get past that stage, because it gets crazy.
Okay.
And right now I do still reside in the Vaal.
Okay.
Yeah.
Let's go back up to your earlier years. Where were you born? Like, I know you're born in the Vaal, but where in the Vaal? Where were you born in the Vaal?
So I've lived all my life in Steel Park. I was born in Vanderbijl Park though, and we stayed there for about a year before we moved to Steel Park. So I've been pretty much in Steel Park. I did move to Joburg, Midrand, when I started working in Joburg.
Okay.
But that was for a few years until I moved back home during the COVID years.
Okay.
And so yeah, that's still in the Val, born in Val.
And I mean, how was your upbringing? I mean, do you have siblings? I'm just trying to understand.
Yeah. I've got a twin sister, so we are the firstborns.
Okay.
Yeah. But we're not identical.
Oh, okay.
I know. I was expecting that question. Yeah. No. I've got a twin sister. I've got a younger sister. I think she's about 5 years younger than me. And a younger brother. So there's 4 of us in the family.
Okay.
And yeah, youngest brother still in school. It's quite interesting, these Gen Zs. He is Gen Z, right?
Yeah.
My 2K.
Yes.
Yeah, it's it feels like he's living in a different world to mine. So
it is a different world.
No, it is because I was born in a time where the world was transitioning from one state to this informational kind of world that we've become, and he was born in the information age. So it's very difficult for someone born in this time to even fathom that there once was a time when we didn't have access to internet, for example. So yeah, it's interesting when you get to live in a home with people who grew up in different times. But yeah.
At 8 years, what do you remember about yourself? I mean, there's Zinhle, she's 8 or 9 or 10, you know. How were you looking back?
I think the first thing that flashed in my mind, I remember 8 years, grade 2, one of my favorite teachers I've ever had, and I still remember her name. She was Mrs. Bezuidenhout. Okay. And these words always ring in my head, especially when I'm going through very difficult, challenging times. And I remember she used to make us recite these words. I can, I will, and I'm going to do it. Okay. So that's as far as I can remember about the 8-year-old me in grade 2 with this amazing teacher that I had at the time, who's played a very fundamental role in my life and shaping the person that I've become and really instilled that faith and self-belief in me. Yeah, I mean, I don't know what else I could say about the 8-year-old me. I think my aspirations at the time were to be a nurse for some reason. Okay. When you were during those times, the only kind of careers you knew is you could either be a nurse, a teacher, a policeman, or I think the other was a doctor or a lawyer. So those are only different types of careers that we knew of. And for some reason, I wanted to be a nurse.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. What games did you play then?
Team Gusha. And I know the Gen Zs won't even realize. No, they don't even know what I'm talking about. Yeah. But yeah.
There's this one that girls used to play, sorry. They would draw like houses on a book and then like, I don't know. I can't
remember what the name is, but yeah, I can't remember what the name is. And we'd use stones.
Okay.
Yeah, I remember that. Yeah, but I think I was more of an outdoorish kind of girl, very adventurous. My friends at the time, we were very much into cycling. We would ride our bicycles around Steel Park, go down. There was an area Nana where there's like mines, and we would go there. I mean, it was a restricted area, but I think it was an abandoned mine. And we'd cycle around there. We'd go all the way to the end of Steel Park, and it was really
parents
fun.
didn't know.
No, they didn't know. They couldn't know because I mean it was dangerous, but it was fun. I was the kind of girl that would climb trees, and we played really silly games. One of the games I remember we used to play a lot was Scream. You know the movie Scream?
Yeah.
And one of us would play the role of I can't remember what the scary guy in the movie Scream, and all of us would it was almost like we acting, playing
Yeah.
out a movie.
Okay.
But those are the kind of games that we used to play. We were a very big group of friends, boys and girls mixed. We'd play literally everything. When netball, khati, the guys would play with us, soccer, we'd be playing with them as girls. So, I mean, those were the days, man.
Yeah.
These days, you don't see kids on the
No,
street.
they don't understand that, they don't. You're right. And then you become a teenager at some point. How was that?
Yeah, my teenage years, I feel I robbed myself of the street life. When my mom fell pregnant with, I think it was her last born, I started being more of an indoor person. So I had to help around a lot at home. And that's when I started,
And you're the firstborn.
and I was the first, one of the
Yeah,
firstborns,
okay.
but I was still pretty much a teenager. I think I was in about grade 8 when I stopped spending a lot of time at the streets and I would be home. And also because, school started getting more hectic. I started being more focused on my school academics. And so I started becoming quite a reserved, indoorish kind of person.
Okay.
Of course, at school, I still took part in, extramural activities, sports, played netball, hockey, tried basketball at some year, failed dismally.
At least you tried.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, but that was pretty much my teenage years.
No, between you and your twin sister, which one is older?
Yeah, it's a tricky question, right? Because there's a scientific response to that, and then there's a traditional kind of,
Okay.
because in the Black culture, the twin who saw the world last is the firstborn.
Really?
Yeah, you don't know that?
No.
Really?
I
You
don't
go. Yeah, I mean, it's like it's an unspoken rule. If you were born last, you're the firstborn,
Okay.
and the one who saw the world first is the secondborn. Yeah.
That's so weird.
So yeah, I mean, it's always tricky having to respond to such questions.
So which one were you then? The one
I'm-
the one who sees
I'm-
the world first, or the one who gets born first?
So I'm the one who gets born first.
Okay. Oh, what I'm trying to establish out of that is, I mean, you talk about you becoming a teen and then responsibilities, in
Yeah.
the family increasing. And I understand that, because parents would most likely do that to firstborns. You tend to take a lot of responsibility. And your sister, would you say it was the same? Or it was because you are the firstborn?
No, it was the same for the both of us.
Okay.
We share a lot of responsibilities at home, still do to this day. She also still stays home. And that's been the kind of arrangement that we've had in around the home. So yeah, I mean, when it comes to cooking, we swap roles. The one day she cooks, the next day I cook, and then the other day our younger sister cooks. So yeah, that's the kind of arrangement we've had. So yeah, I think we've played equal role in the house responsibilities.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. So if you were to go back to Zinhle, who is 13, 14, you would have played more. You would have been.
Yes.
You'd have got to
Yes.
that.
And you know why? Because I feel I've lost touch with my teenage friends or friends I had back then when I was in my primary school days. And one of them stays just next door, but we can't even spend time together when she's around to
Yeah.
catch up, for example,
Yeah.
because it's this gap that's being created between us that it's so difficult for us to even meet and have catch up and talk about what's happening in our lives now.
Yes.
Yeah, so I do sometimes yearn that. I do sometimes just want to go into the streets and have conversations with, other ladies. But I think we're all in the same space now. Everyone's just focused on their careers and their lives, and you don't really get to see much of the other ladies in the streets, though some have moved out. But if I was 13, if I had to go back to for 13, 14, I would have spent more time in the streets and actually worked on nurturing the friendships that I had.
Yeah.
I've heard of people who've been friends for like all their lives, you know. I don't have the privilege to say the same because I never actually worked on maintaining my friendships.
Friendships, yes. Yeah. It's interesting because, I mean, we're talking about the Gen Zs, and I think they are in for a tough one.
Yeah,
And
no,
if you're already experiencing that, I mean,
yeah.
I can imagine for them it's gonna just be
Yeah, I mean, their friendships are mostly online based,
yeah.
Yeah, it's difficult. I mean, I remember back then we didn't have cell phones, but we had like telephones at home. And this friend of ours, so when I went to grade 5, I think we moved to a different school. And but I started in Selborne Primary School and then moved to Noordhoek Life School in Vanderbijl. But this one lady, she was our best friend from Selborne, and we still stayed in touch even after we left Selborne, and we'd call each other on telephone. And funny enough, we knew each other's home telephone numbers. And we'd have those, conversations. It would take like an hour and just talking about stuff that young children would talk about. And sometimes I do look back and think, wow, that used to be me. I used to actually care about picking up my phone and calling a friend, and actually having a 4-hour long conversation. Today it's so difficult. You have to first check in with your friends to say, hey, can I call you tonight at 7? Are you free?
Yeah.
So that's how
You
difficult
sort
it
of need to
is.
make an appointment.
Yeah.
No, it's no, it's hectic. It's
Yeah,
hectic. It's hectic.
yeah.
Okay. And then so you finish your matric, you go to the Northwest University, you study IT. How was that?
To be honest, when I left high school, I wanted to go into the medical space. Applied at vets, got rejected.
Okay.
Applied at UP for BSc. At that point, I think I had applied at only like 2 universities. I got rejected. And then when I think it was towards the end of the year, or it was early in January after we had received our results, I realized, oh my God, I don't have a university to go to. I think the only other university I'd applied at was UJ, but it was for like business studies that they accepted me for. And I thought, no, I wasn't really interested in that. And then my mom was like, well, guys, go to NW, go apply. Whatever it is, whatever you see available, go and apply. And then that's when I applied for BSc IT. I wanted something in BSc since I couldn't make it to a medical degree, at least something closer to it.
Yeah.
So I then applied for IT. And funny enough, I grew to love the subject, and I did really well, fairly well. Like I mentioned, I made it to, top achiever in the faculty first and second year.
Sure.
And it's crazy how something I never thought of would do.
At least you're not wearing glasses for nothing, right?
No, well.
You've got the brains to match them.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. You make it to top achiever.
Yeah.
Sorry. I wanted to ask you, Northwest University had that funny, weird orientation. Did you have that?
Yeah, we did. Yeah.
And how did you find it?
But I was, I can't remember, there was the Acacia House. So the students that weren't based on campus, I think So that experience was a bit more lenient for us than those who stayed on campus or at other residences. But it was interesting. We were a very big group, obviously. And that's where I got to make my new friends. Then my friend Tembi, we knew each other from Facebook and we saw each other like, oh, hey, I know you. And that's how we became friends. But yeah, orientation, I can't really remember much. All I know is it was a bit of torture here and
Yeah.
there. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Right. Okay. And so you are now a top achiever at the Northwest in IT. So linear programming and this JavaScripts and whatever else that you guys are doing, you're killing them.
Yeah, yeah. I remember that the one subject that used to move me was OS, operating systems. I think everybody was crying about that one subject, but everything else, yeah, I mean, I enjoyed it. I enjoyed programming a lot in my varsity days, but now not so much. Not
Okay.
anymore. I haven't done programming since, I don't know, I think in the last 5 to 6 years, I haven't really done any coding because I found a passion elsewhere, but within the same, sort of discipline, still in the
Yes.
IT space. And that's the beauty of the IT space. It's so broad and there's so many different opportunities, You don't have to restrict yourself to being a developer. There's so many other things that you could do, like being a cybersecurity analyst or a IT risk manager, or go into data analytics, go into robotics. There's just so much. And because the the IT world keeps growing. There's always new tools that are introduced almost every day. Literally every day, there's a new app that's introduced in the market, new technologies that are introduced. And it's turned to this kind of environment where you have to continuously learn about the latest trends, But at some point, I think back in varsity, the one technology that was trending then was cloud computing, but it was still new. And when I transitioned into the bank, I started to make my focus around that cloud computing, and then came cybersecurity, which was very new. And in the bank, they didn't have any cybersecurity focus. So I feel I had joined the bank at the perfect time when they were only starting out to build cybersecurity, sort of principles and tools for the bank. So also, I mean, that's when I took ownership of cloud computing for the bank, took governance of cloud computing, and really ran with it. I joined at a time when they were developing a policy, when the bank was developing a policy for cloud computing, which governs how staff should utilize technologies that are cloud-based. And I volunteered myself. I was still very new to the bank, and this was during my graduate years. And I volunteered to work on this policy. I didn't really know much about drafting policies at the time because in your IT degree world, we don't really learn about, drafting policies. But then I thought, well, this is a challenge that actually gives me exposure to people in the more senior space. Because my mentor at the time was a chief cybersecurity officer. So he gave me exposure to, the other execs, and I got to sit in boardrooms and just listen to conversations that were had about strategies that are being developed by these people who are very influential in the group. That obviously impacted the entire, first round group. So yeah, that's I feel I've digressed.
No, it's fine. It's interesting. I mean, it's interesting.
Yeah. So yeah, I think that's how I transitioned from, being a developer. I only did development in my first year of work. I was working for some engineering company, file-based, but only for, I think, 10 months. And then I joined FNB as a cybersecurity risk analyst, an IT analyst. And since then, I never did any coding. And I fell in love with the more governance, risk management
Yeah.
space.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Where do you think about business? I mean, where do you? I'm trying to find a link between you studying IT, you working at a bank, and I mean we sit with you here because you are a businesswoman.
Yes.
But where do you find the passion for business? The interest in business.
Yeah. So my entrepreneurial journey began back in varsity. There's this program called Enactus. Not sure if you've heard of it. It's common across, I think all the universities have an Enactus group. And what
In actors.
Enactus, yes. So what Enactus is about is it's a sort of a group of students that come together to build solutions for small businesses or any problems in surrounding communities. And for us, one of the projects that we worked on, if my memory I think there was one guy that was doing upholstery and his business was struggling. We identified that guy and we took his business. He came together, joined forces, and just found ways to take his business from point A to point B. So our group particularly would focus on that, taking small struggling businesses that have the potential to scale and make big impact, because essentially that's what Enactors is about. It focuses more on the businesses or projects that have the potential to make big impact in our society and our communities. And those are the kind of businesses or projects we would focus on. So we identify one struggling business or a problem in the community, and we would come together, come up with innovative solutions, build it out, and then every year would meet in Sandton, all different universities, not just South African, but there was first the national competition where every university comes, presents the work they've done and the impact they've made in the community. And then whichever university wins then goes to the international stage. So during the time when I was part of the exec committee for Enactors, we had the Enactors World Cup hosted in South Africa. And that then, we had universities from all different parts of the world. I think it was packed. I mean, the entire Sandton City building. I think it is the Mandela Square building. I think that's where they've got those big conference halls. It's just Enactors, second floor, ground floor, first floor. The entire building was booked for Enactors. It was just a huge, massive event where, we all get to showcase the work that we've done in our communities and the impact that we've made in our societies, and that's where I realized my passion for entrepreneurship was ignited.
Okay.
Yeah.
And still at varsity, you did not start a business. You sort of participated in this program,
Yeah.
but was not an entrepreneur.
Yeah,
By your
so back then, we did try out. I remember there was this agricultural business project that a friend of mine and I tried to start out. It didn't really go far. I think there's so many different businesses that we tried to get started, but didn't really get far. And that was between the years, my final year in varsity, and I think in my first year of working. So there were quite a number of, ideas that I wanted to bring to action. And then I guess it's the kind of journey that a lot of entrepreneurs, I think we've experienced a lot of failure. You have to fail so many times for you to finally get to that one big, idea or business that actually changes things for you completely. So my varsity years were more for learning. Every project that I started, every small business that I tried to start out, was really, looking back in retrospect, it was really just me learning, going through my phase of failure, and taking those lessons to, so I could apply for my next business.
Okay.
Yeah.
And you finish varsity, you go start working, you're still trying these businesses. When do you get a break through?
So my first break was, I started collaborating with the founder of the Marking app. So the Marking app is this sort of business that we had, we're working on. We were built in an app that automates marking of school assessments, so handwritten tests. We know that teachers in schools spend tremendous amount of time on marking. My mom is a teacher, and I know she spends hours at night, at home marking tests, and compiling reports for like plus minus 40 learners in a class. So the marking app was an initiative to reduce the amount of time that teachers spend on marking, so that they can focus more of their time on, the more quality work, and actually administering, lessons and focusing on the development of the learners in the class, as opposed to them spending hours, even in classrooms, marking. And that shouldn't be the case. But it is, because, it is the nature of the work. So the marking app, started it in I think it was around 2019. It was pre-COVID years. And it was a great journey for us. And we would go do a lot of pitches, because we were going through a series of wanting to get funding. We did get funding from a few stakeholders. There was the Trevor Noah Foundation, the Tuli Madonsela Foundation as well, invested in us. We had partnered with them. We also partnered with SAB to run our pilots. We did pilots in various schools, including outside of South Africa, and one of them was in Seychelles, I remember. I think it was 3 other countries that we did our pilots in. And then, but we still needed more money, because we wanted to scale this thing and get it to a point where it's utilized in all schools, at least public schools in the country. And that needed money, which we didn't have. So then we'd go through various investor pitches. We literally applied for anything on the internet that you could see, pitch
Yeah.
to investment, whatever the amount was, even if it was as little as 10,000, that 10,000 could could close some gaps in the business.
Yes.
So we'd do a lot of these pitches. A lot of them were successful. We got some funding. And then I did the SA Innovation Summit pitch. So there's this organization, I'm not sure if it still exists. So I applied for the SA Innovation Summit investor pitch, and it usually takes place in Cape Town.
Okay.
So it starts online. You do your pitch online, and then they select the top 30 pitches. And then the top 30 were then selected to go to the, in Cape Town, go pitch at a more national, sort of level.
Yes.
And yeah, I mean, that for me, it was, it was a great experience. We didn't get the money, though. Competition was tough. I mean, you're competing with 29 other entrepreneurs. But I mean, it really opened my eyes to a whole lot. It made me realize that I actually can do it.
Is app development expensive? For someone who has
If you
an
build it
idea,
yourself, it's not so expensive. You know, if you've got the skills and the capabilities, you can build the app yourself. It's just that to get it to market, there are some licensing that you need to get, getting it onto, you know, the likes of Google, Google Apps, apps,
what's the
iOS.
figure? What figures are we talking about?
So it really,
Let's say I don't have, I've got an idea,
yeah,
because I imagine not a lot of people can,
yeah,
you know, program or,
yeah.
you know, develop code and app. What figures are we talking about?
So
Even if it's there.
if you need to get a third party or another organization to develop the app for you, it could range from like, say, 16,000 to hundreds of thousands of rands, depending on the size of the app. It really depends on the complexity of the app. So if it's a static, simple app that doesn't require much interaction, you can spend as little as, I mean, I've seen people charge as little as 4,000 Rand, right? It's just a website. And I mean, we had for Block Footwear, the company that we hired to develop our website for us charged us like 1,200 Rand. And then there's a monthly hosting fee of like 750 Rands. So it's really not that much. But if you want to develop something that's more complex, like what we were trying to do with the marking app,
Yeah.
which requires analytics and a whole lot of, you know, tools, integration, that we were quoted around 500,000 Rands. So, yeah, so it really does differ based on the complexity of your app.
Would you say the reason why you are not getting funding, it's because there was a lot of apps like that being pitched or pitching, or was it just the market, you know, saturation? If it was unique, why were you not getting funding?
To be honest, a lot of investors are not comfortable taking a risk on an idea or a POC. At that stage, what we had was merely a proof of concept.
Okay.
We had like we had an app that was functioning, but not optimally. It wasn't doing everything that we said it should do or could do, because we needed money to integrate all those other complex stuff into the app. So, and that's why we went through this whole, you know, journey of raising funds for us. So we did at some point, I remember when we did the SAB, I think it was SAB investor pitches, which was also at a global stage. We even made it to top 2 in Africa. We were one of the top 2 startup entrepreneurs in Africa who pitched at the global SAB pitching competition. And the feedback we got was, and why we didn't make it was because you guys are still at POC stage. And at this level, investors want to invest in a product that's already been tested in the market and has been working. And they want to see that it's already bringing in money. So if all we did was at that stage just piloting and getting a few teachers here and there to test the market and prove that it works, then that wasn't enough. They want to see the numbers. Investors are more interested in the numbers. And I think that's where a lot of startup entrepreneurs get it wrong. People think that because you've got a brilliant idea, you'll just attract money. Whereas that's not the case. A lot of investors want to see the numbers, and that's the most challenging thing.
Sure.
Because to get the numbers, you need the money, right?
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
So however brilliant the idea is, you still need to.
You do.
And it's difficult now to get that, I mean, to get it to that stage without funding.
Without funding, yeah.
Okay. So what happens to the business?
So
I didn't get the name of
it's the marking app.
the marking app. Okay,
Yes.
so that so you didn't have a business name that was different from, because I'm imagining that.
No, that was the name.
That
of
was the
it.
name.
Yeah,
Okay.
it was
All
the
right.
marking app.
Okay.
I had to part ways with the marking app when a few months after joining Block Footwear. So how Block Footwear came about, this guy came to me and he had sneakers in his hands. I think he had about 6 pairs at that time. And he said to me, look, Zinhle, I've got these shoes and I've got this idea. I want to start a sneaker brand. And when we were having this conversation, I was quite impressed because this guy was not coming to me with merely an idea. He actually had a product in his hand
Yes.
that he had manufactured with his own money. So he invested in this thing. And that shows that he believed in it, right? And he said to me, look, I've got the prototype. I've got the shoes, but I need money to start manufacturing more stock, right? And so I can go into market. It so happens that he came at a time when I was in a space where I was looking to invest in a startup business myself. And I said, look, I mean, it sounds exciting. It's very different to what I've always done before,
Yeah.
right? I mean, to be honest, I'm not really a sneakerhead, but the way this guy sold this concept to me and the fact that he had a vision to take it, global. It's not just about building a local brand, but he wanted to build something that could go beyond the borders of South Africa. And those are the kind of things that I care about, impact and scalability. And so I said, look, I'm willing to invest in this thing. Let's get into a partnership. And the business wasn't established yet. We went through that whole administrative process of establishing a business. We became partners in this business, and that's us. We started manufacturing sneakers. We started with like 100 pairs first because it's new and you've got to test the market, test what people like, what do they prefer. And we did that a couple of months, I think about 2 months. But the thing is, we wanted to go test for like 6 months. But on month 2, the feedback that we're getting from people was just so positive that we couldn't wait to just go full on, right? And then we went back and said, look, guys, we need to manufacture more. We manufactured over 1,000 pairs and got the shoes. We made some minor adjustments to the design based on the feedback that we had gotten. And that's us. We started going with this thing, selling the brand, the sneakers. And we started getting a lot of partnerships, partnered with various corporates. At some point, and I think more of a way we peaked was when we partnered with the Netball World Cup. So in 2023, Netball World Cup was hosted in SA, Cape Town. And we were the official footwear partner of the Netball World Cup. And I mean, yeah, that was one of the most exciting experiences, seeing your shoe on international feet, and at the global stage, you've got people from different parts of the world wearing your shoe, and we were there. I mean, it was really a great, an amazing experience for us. It was a testament of all the hard work, the sleepless nights that we had put in, the doors. Sure, lots of doors that we knocked on. Many got turned down, but a few that were open to us really got us to where we were. We did also, our strategy was more focused on targeting corporates because that's where the numbers are. So if we approach MTN, for example, they would buy about 150 sneakers for their staff. And we'd even do customization, whatever they wanted on the sneaker that speaks to their identity, and hence the name Block. So Block, which is a colloquial term for, your location. So the shoe, the whole idea was about representing who you are, embracing where you're from and who you are, and hence the whole customization idea. Which was really, you could put anything on the shoe that sort of, embraces you. So you
Yeah.
could have like your area code, for example. We know in the file your 016, you
Yeah.
know, or 18 hours on the shoe. You know, something that shows.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. So that was the whole concept behind Block, and it's something that a lot of the corporates loved a lot. And even to, you know, everyday customers, B2C, we did, we didn't have a physical store, but we'd always find ways to reach our customers. We'd be at events. If you hear of an event where we can put up our stall and sell the shoe, we're there. But we're more focused on the sports because the shoe is more of an athleisure kind of shoe, and we wanted to build it as an athleisure brand.
Yeah.
Because we know that that's a space that is not so saturated as your non-athleisure stuff. So yeah, even and we partnered with various sports brands, not just the Netball World Cup. There was Boxing SA for women, and a few cricket clubs.
Okay.
So yeah, I mean, it took a lot of my time. And going back to your question, that eventually I realized I needed to let go of the marking app and focus more of my time on Block Footwear. And that's where the separation took place between me and the marking app.
Okay. And was it locally manufactured?
The shoe.
Yeah.
So I'd say partly locally made. So what we did is when we started
Why am I
out,
talking about it in past tense? Is it still in existent?
it is.
Okay.
It is, and I'll tell you why. Sorry, it is. So the shoe is partly locally manufactured, but a big part of our value chain begins overseas. And the reason for that is when we started looking for manufacturers locally, we were told in Durban there's quite a lot of shoe manufacturers. But when you go there, then they tell us, no, guys, we actually source, what can I say? Our products or stuff from overseas, and then they just do the extra work on it, putting the stuff together. And then we realized, okay, it's either we're going to go to these guys in Durban, they buy the material, put the shoe together, and then put the branding and stuff for us based on our design, or we go straight to where they are getting the material from, which was a cheaper option for us,
Yes.
so it sort of cuts the middleman. And so then we went out, did our research. Where can we find these manufacturers of these shoes? We do a lot of the other local brands and international brands manufacture these shoes, and you realize, okay, a lot of international brands and local all manufacture, their sneakers. It's either in Turkey or China or Malaysia. And so then we started looking around those spaces, and that's where we got. We partnered with one of the companies, gave them our design and the type of material that we want. We sort of gave them the entire layout of what it is that we want, and they then manufacture part of the shoe or the material, bring it to us, and then we do the assembling and all the finishing touches on the shoe. So yeah.
Is it so you said the shoe basically you'd sell it mostly to corporates and any sporting events?
Yeah. Mostly corporates and it's sporting events. But also, I mean, it's an everyday running shoe.
Yes.
So we would sell it to everyday people, particularly those who need it. It's a comfort shoe as well. Very comfortable. I wish I brought it here so you could
I'm
feel
actually
it.
thinking, I actually wanted to ask you to bring it, and I don't know why I forgot to ask you
Yeah.
to actually bring the shoe. But my interest is, why have you not thought of opening up a store? I mean, Drip and Batu, I think they've gone that route and
Yeah.
they've been fairly successful, arguably.
Successful but expensive. It's very expensive to renting a store. And for us, we did at some point. I remember we approached. It was one of the malls in New Junction. Yeah. And we got into a deal. Even here in the Val, we actually did at some point have physical presence at Bedworth Center.
Okay.
But it was more of some program, and I think you recently you mentioned you had Itumeleng Hlapha.
Yeah.
Yeah, he had he's
Shape
running
Cafe,
that
yeah.
yes program where they brought together about 10 entrepreneurs, and we had an entire store space where we could display our products. But in terms of a shop, we did sort of approach various malls. New Junction was one of them. And the costs are just massive. And we realized that it would slow down our growth if we have to now be coughing out that kind of money, whereas we're making a lot more sales via our online channels and by going to the clients. You understand? So at a mall, doesn't guarantee that customers will walk into your store and come buy your shoe. But if you actually go out there to the clients, go to events, sporting events, where you know that your target market is likely to be, then that's where you would make a lot of sales. Hence our partnerships with some of these sporting codes, the sporting brands. Hence our partnership with some of these corporates, because then they gave us access to a potential clients.
Yeah.
So whenever corporates would host events, conferences, we'd ask for some space, put up our stall there, and display our shoe, and have the employees come and sell our shoes. And we that worked for us. It worked for us. It was more cost effective for us, and it still is. It still is. Recently, we also did this on an annual basis. Sorry, we do this. There's this Battle of the Giants competition that takes place every year in Sun City. So even there, I mean, our first time at Battle of the Giants competition, that's where we made our biggest number of sales. So, and that's where we realized with shoe, people actually love the shoe. And that's when you realize, well, this has got to be our model going forward. Just go out to these events, dancing events, arts events, sports events, and actually get the shoe out there where people can touch and feel it and get them to buy it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. And have you tried? I'm also just trying to understand the space. Sorry. Have you tried like the likes of those sporting shops that are present already in the malls?
Yeah, we did reach out. Well, there are some that actually reached out to us. And I mean, the option is still there. It's something that we could still consider. It's just that at the stage that we're at right now, it doesn't make business sense.
Okay.
Because if you go out to malls and you look at some of these local brands with shops at these malls, and you look at the traffic, it's really discouraging,
Okay.
So then we thought, well, let's just keep going at it the way that we know has been working for us until we get to a point where where it actually makes financial sense for us to be paying rent to have our shoe at a mall, even when it means, there are days when there might not be as much traffic in the mall as you'd get maybe on month end. So yeah, it's more of a risk-benefit kind of decision that one needs to take. How much risk are you willing to take?
Yeah.
Versus how much benefit you could make.
The reason why I asked this question is because I've come across a lot of SMMEs that have a product. Someone has developed a skincare product or a juice or a jam, whatever.
Yeah.
And I always ask myself, why is it that these products are not, on a shelf somewhere? And I think there is a reason. It's just that I don't understand it.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of people that are going to watch this podcast, they're also asking the same question and they don't understand it. So I'm hoping you could share some light into that.
Yeah.
That's why I'm asking that.
No, absolutely. I think the key thing is reach out to malls. A lot of these malls actually do have programs that allow for small startup businesses to have their products on their shelves at, cost-effective ways, and maybe just by having your one product placed on a shelf, for marketing purposes, or whatever the case may be. But there are ways to have your product out there if you don't have any other ways. For us, it was more of going it via the events and corporates kind of route, which doesn't obviously work for everyone. But I think if I were to give advice to other people, reach out to these malls or shops. Try to find a way to collaborate with other businesses so you can share costs. So instead of you wanting to open up and own an entire store space, rather see if you can partner with another brand that sells a similar product and you share costs, and maybe have about 10 different shops, or rather 10 different brands or businesses that are renting in the same space. And then, it makes it more cost effective for you rather than paying big chunks of money on renting space. And I think that's the biggest challenge that's sort of impeding a lot of businesses from getting their products into malls and shops. It's really expensive to get it out there.
Yeah. Okay. And then, so you've got now Blog Footwear that is still there, but I'm sure there's, I mean, you're an angel investor. There's more.
Yeah. There is more. So at some point during my journey in Blog Footwear, I remember having this conversation with this one friend of mine who now lives and works in Saudi Arabia. We were on a date and he asked me this question: why? Why do you do what you do? And for the life of me, I couldn't answer the question. And that was just so frustrating for me because I couldn't understand, after all the work that I've put in, I've been doing public speaking, doing personal development seminars, but I couldn't answer the simple question, why? What is my purpose? Because looking back, a lot of the businesses that I'd been working in are businesses where I partnered with someone and helped them grow or turn the idea into, a business, or help them go from point A to point B. I didn't have a business of my own that I could say, this is something that I'm building for myself, it's my legacy, and so forth. So then I remember after that conversation with the friend, I went home and I was so frustrated because it just didn't make sense that I couldn't answer the question. And then I had to start putting joining all the dots together to understand, what is it that I actually do? Why do I keep working with other businesses in the way that I've been? And then the word angel investor came to mind. And then I think that was my aha moment. It made sense that I have this passion to help other businesses grow. I have this passion to use whatever resources I have, whether big or small, to help someone turn their idea into reality, but obviously it has to be something that I also have to believe in. It's something that has the potential to make a big impact. And it's something that I see, adding value to my goals and my vision. And sure, I can, invest in it. And and that was it. That's when I realized, okay, so now you figured that you're an angel investor, and that's when I started to focus more of my time on actually looking out for, looking for opportunities, small businesses, startup businesses that I could work with, that have the potential to grow and make a big impact. And that was that. But then at some point I realized, but hang on, you're so focused on working with other businesses. Why don't you start something of your own? You are in the tech space. You've got a passion for cybersecurity. Surely,
I just want you to hold
yeah.
on to that thought. Has, the process of you trying to secure funding for the marking app, could that also have had an impact on you becoming an investor in other businesses? The struggles that you went through, could that have had an impact on you as a person, be it,
Yeah,
conscious or
absolutely.
unconscious of?
Absolutely, because it was through that experience that you get to understand what it is that investors want and what they don't want, where it is that we are going wrong as startup entrepreneurs looking for funding. And I think because we went through so many pitches and mentoring programs, we would get a lot of feedback. It made me realize, okay, this is what to say and what not to say. This is what to focus on, your pitch on, and what not to focus it on. I've had people inbox me on Facebook and tell me, hey, I've got this idea. I want to start a salon. I can do, I'm good with braiding hair. And I thought to myself, well, that's just not the way to go about it. You've got to go to someone with something tangible.
Yeah.
Because there are so many other people who could have the same idea as yours.
Yes.
An idea in itself is just, it doesn't cut it.
It's not enough.
So yeah, I believe it did shape, me into becoming, now the angel investor, obviously at a much smaller scale. I don't have the billions.
Yeah.
But because I see, first and foremost, my job as my first investor. So I use whatever I get from my job. A lot of, the awards that we get at the bank, they come with financial rewards. And that's something that I usually, try to use to invest into something.
Yeah.
And yeah, I've learned a lot. But you also get to learn, the do's and don'ts of being an angel investor. And one of the lessons I learned, especially through my journey with Block Footwear, is you shouldn't get too invested as an angel investor, because once the finances start to not make sense for you, you might get heavily frustrated, because you got yourself too invested into this thing emotionally and maybe even spiritually and in many other ways. So it's very important for you to understand your responsibilities, where your responsibilities end as an investor, so that you don't get into the space of the actual entrepreneur. There was a time when I would start getting interviews, because we did a lot of radio interviews and news. We were on the news, and then we were ENCA, we were on Metro FM, and all these big channels. And at some point, then I started getting, some of these radio producers approach me, and outside of, the other founder. And they were like, look, we like the idea of you being a woman in the sneaker, brand space. We'd like to interview you. But then I thought, well, I know my partner would not be happy about me going out there and taking all the glory for myself just because I'm a woman. And yes, it looks good for the brand, but I'm not the co-founder. It's not my baby. It's more his baby. So that's when I had to remind myself that, hey, above everything else, your role here is this. And you are here to help this guy build his business. don't take the glory for yourself.
Mm.
You know, I mean, yes, I was putting in, and I've been putting in a lot of my time, hours, and a lot of work, my knowledge and skills. But it's very important for one to remind themselves that your role as an investor is merely that. You know.
Okay.
So yeah.
And then you were talking about you starting your own thing.
Yeah. So it came, like I said, at the time when I realized I needed to start something of my own, and look within my own, sort of do an introspection
Yeah.
to say, what is it that I love? What is it that I can build, and actually build to last, something that can perhaps one day maybe even outlive me. And then I went into the cybersecurity space, and I realized one of the challenges that I've seen in a lot of startup businesses is that they tend to ignore risk, or they tend to ignore risk management. And this has held back a lot of businesses from growing. A lot of businesses will grow up to a certain point, and once they reach that point, it gets very difficult for them to, go over line and continue to grow, or maybe even scale. And that, I realize, is because they don't seem to care about the small things in business, the business administration side of things. You always on the road chasing money, chasing deals, but you're forgetting and neglecting the fundamentals. You're running an IT service company, for example, that provides software to your client, but you haven't put in any controls to protect, your client's information that's processed in that application. The next thing, tomorrow, your company is on the news to say, there's been a data breach, so and so many people's information has been, exposed, and then you start, getting legal fines because it is breach of POPI Act. So, or maybe you don't even get consent from your customers to process or collect their information. And that's something that we tend to miss. A lot of small businesses, even big businesses, tend to miss. Small things, is actually telling your clients what will happen to their information, where it will be processed, what will be done to it. If it will be processed in the cloud, then it means it could potentially be offshored to a different country, and the customer needs to know that. If I'm collecting your information as your service provider, business, whatever business I provide to you, I need to let you know that your information will be processed in the cloud, and the data center is sitting in Singapore, for example. And these are the privacy laws in the country, which, and therefore give us the, assurance that your information will be safe and protected. But it's small things like that that tend to be neglected. And so the whole idea of SecureAxis was really to focus on the small businesses and startup entrepreneurs and help them sort of analyze risk, start to focus on managing risk. Because I always say to people that the most successful entrepreneur isn't just a dreamer. It is one who is able to manage risks effectively.
Yeah.
Right? A lot of successful entrepreneurs we see today, all the big names, the Bill Gates, the likes of Mark Zuckerberg and the like, these are people who've actually mastered risk management.
Yeah.
And that's something that we tend to ignore, especially in the early stages of starting a business, because we think, risk management is for the bigger businesses. You understand? But risk management, I believe everyone is a risk manager. You're a risk manager. The fact that you set your alarm to wake you up in the morning, that is you mitigating the risk of you arriving to the office late. You understand? The fact that you put your seatbelt on in the car, when driving, that's you mitigating risk, and that makes you a risk manager. So we need to apply the same thinking even in business, in the finances of the business. If I'm going to spend this money on this, how is it going to impact, other parts of my business. One of the experiences that I had with one of the entrepreneurs I've worked with is, so while we partnered in this business, he didn't have any other sort of source income while I had a job, right? And the big one thing we used to fight about was his ways of spending business money. And he'd always be like, yeah, but you won't understand, Zinhle, you've got a job that pays your bills and stuff. So, Nami, I need to live, you know? And he would spending so much money on, for example, Uber rides to go and meet clients. And I asked him, but the business is not at the stage where it can start paying,
Yeah.
it's just a luxury, to be honest. There's taxis, there's buses you could be using that could, cost you a fraction of the amount that you're spending. For example, on an Uber ride from Val to Midrand, which could cost you, way plus minus 1,000 rands. And just because when you don't want to be seen in a taxi because you are a CEO of this company, now you'd rather spend this money, so much money on that. So even that, it shows that there's that lack of discipline. It shows that there's a lack of managing risk in the company, because if you're going to spend this money on Uber today, 600 Rand on Uber, tomorrow you need, money to manufacture more of your products.
Yeah.
Then where is that money going to come from?
Eish.
You understand?
Yeah.
So you need to understand, your finances. You need to understand how your financials work. You need to understand, it's not just about dealing with the clients and not just about the relationships with, your partners and your investors and the like, but you have to also focus on the internals, your employees, ensuring that there's positive working relations, between yourself and the employees and between the employees themselves. Because if one day your accountant decides, no, guys, I'm leaving, what then?
Yeah.
Do you have a contingency plan for such in an event? Such things we really don't think about.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's the whole purpose of SecureAxis, although we focus more on the IT and cybersecurity.
Yes, that was going to be my
side.
question. If it's okay, so it's just the cybersecurity space, which is. I have a lot of more questions to ask you about that, but I mean the producer is they are crying. Maybe what we should do is if you're keen, we should arrange a separate session for that. I mean, I would be interested for us to go into something like that, risk management. I think there's a lot of there's a lot in that space that SMMEs don't understand. I fully agree with you, and we need to really delve into that. I think it's a topic on its own that we can have. So, but because the guys wants me to finish, what have we forgotten? What is it that you want to talk about quickly, in a few minutes before we wrap up this session?
I think the important thing is, if you're someone who is passionate about business or entrepreneurship, you maybe have an idea. A lot of times we think that we need to have all systems in place and our life figured out for us to get started. But the important thing is to really just start. With whatever resources you have, don't wait for someone to come with the big monies and invest in your business. Sometimes it's important that you actually invest in the business yourself. Because there's this one famous saying that a lot of people in the business space is that investors invest in people, invest in themselves.
Yeah.
You understand? So if you can't take the risk to invest in your own business, how then do you expect someone else to invest? Exactly. So very important to start. Get started with whatever you have. If the founder of Block Footwear hadn't come to me with shoes, physical shoes to me, I wouldn't have taken him seriously. So it's important that you actually do work on your business, work on that idea, whatever it is. The world needs it. The country needs it. We all know how bad the situation is, especially, from an unemployment perspective. So anything that could even has the potential to create jobs, it's really worth taking the risk for.
Zinhle, you've represented Imbogodo so well. No, man, I think this is one of the most refreshing sessions I've had, honestly speaking, to find so much wisdom out of a person that is still young, who's got a whole future ahead. It's not always the case, especially in South Africa, that you find a business person who can, have a decent conversation about business. And I really appreciate you coming. I appreciate you visiting us today. And I hope that you become a friend of this podcast and a regular, because I'm sure there's a lot of people who want to hear more from you. I would have wanted us to have a longer discussion, but I think for the sake of the producer was let's save it for another day.
Yeah. No, thanks very much for the invite. Thanks for having me here. It's always a great pleasure.
Thank you.